Yo, what's happening, noders, geeks and seagulls? It's Evil, the West Side's evil twin. Today we're going to look at how to export 3D models from Cinema 4D to V4 using the COLLADA format. This tutorial is really about finding a complete workflow to export everything how it is from Cinema 4D to V4, including models, textures and animations. We'll start with the basics, like exporting simple models at the correct scale, sorting out anchor points and using simple picture textures. Then we'll move on to baking C4D's inbuilt material textures to use them in V4, and then we'll touch on bodypaint textures as well. Finally, we'll look at how to export animated models, and I shit you not, even how to bake some mograph animations using expresso. I've chosen the COLLADA format to export from C4D as it's given me the best result and allows for export of pretty much anything you want, even bones and skinning data. So I did this lip motion hack in V4 and quite a few people were asking how I managed to get all my textures and model and everything right from C4D to V4, and this is what this tutorial is really all about. Anyway, let's just jump straight in. We're going to start by creating a couple of models. Cube, the sphere. Then we'll save our project. C4D to V4. And we save our project so that then when we save our textures, they're in the same kind of folder, hierarchy at least. So that it doesn't get confused. Let's apply some basic picture textures to these models. So we'll jump on Google, get some stone texture. It's important to remember that for picture textures to work best in V4, they should be kept at square dimensions. So 512 by 512, 1024 or 248 by 248. We're looking for exactly 248 by 248. This one. We'll save it. We'll create a folder called text, because that's what C4D likes. Put it in there. Don't upset C4D. Then grab another one. Put it in there as well. Go back C4D. C4D, create a couple of materials. In a color channel, put the pictures. Duplicate that. Now we've got two textures. Now just to illustrate how like COLLADA is clever about mapping and stuff, we're going to change a bit and click on the texture. And then change it just to show that it's kept for the COLLADA export. Now we're ready for COLLADA export. My graphics card died, so I've had to get a new laptop and I've upgraded to Windows 8, so it's going to look a bit different. Anyway, when we export to COLLADA, we gotta make sure that our project scale units is the same as C4D's units. So if you go in preferences for C4D and check the unit display, it says centimeters and it has to be the same as if you go back up to your project settings, you can see project scale 1 centimeters. So my project scale is the same as C4D's unit scale. This way now when we export to COLLADA, file export COLLADA 1.4, when we're going to export to COLLADA, that's going to allow us to keep the same scale in V4 and it's going to work really nicely. So you don't export to COLLADA 1.5, you export to 1.4. You just got to trust me on this one. I've tried it many times. 1.5 just doesn't work. A lot of things won't work with it. So just stick to 1.4, yeah? So export to 1.4, call it cube sphere. So this is what I was saying. Now you get the scale. You can keep it as 1 centimeters. Since you've got your units and project scale set up correctly, that's going to work in V4. Export TD. Don't export animation because there's no animation. Export triangles. Okay. And now we're ready. Jump in V4. Before we jump in V4, I gotta tell you a little bit about my mate Pedro, who's helped a lot doing the research for this tutorial. This is Pedro, the man himself. So actually, Pedro didn't help whatsoever, to be honest, with this tutorial. I mean, I try to explain to him that, even what V4 is, how it's like made to generate visuals, and he just thinks it's some kind of drug, to be honest, that, just he thinks I'm a little chemist making drugs that generate visuals. Is just it's pretty clear that actually Pedro is full of shit and he didn't help at all. But I mean, look at the guy. Look at the stare, the gazing into the oblivion with his head full of hair. It's incredible. I mean, Pedro is a total inspiration to me, Sorry, I had to say it. And, also I got to say hi to my mom, Hi, mom. Here it is. I told you I'll make it one day. So, I've made it, mom. So, anyway, let's jump in V4. The basic V4 patch is easy. So easy, it's silly. Kinda like Pedro's hair. Anyway, let's hide Pedro's handsome face. The first node we're gonna need is the COLLADA file node. And we'll open our model with it. Like that. Then we'll need a mesh node, COLLADA type of mesh node, obviously. Then we'll also need a phone, directional, whatever. Connect the mesh node's output mesh pin to the phone's input mesh pin. Then connect the mesh node's output transform pin to the phone's input transform pin. And what that last one will do is allow COLLADA to take care of all the compositing for you in V4, so that your models are positioned the same way in V4 as they were originally in C4D. We're going to need also a file texture node, and that's going to convert the actual texture file name string to a texture, and then we can apply that to our phone. And then we're also gonna need a group node, because I want to add some grid and axes like that. Obviously we're gonna need a renderer. Put it there for now. Connect the phone to the group. Oh, we'll need a camera as well. Connect the camera to the renderer the usual way. And there we have it. We can already start seeing our scene. Obviously, we can see straight away we got the old backface culling problem with the renderer in V4. So we'll sort that out by clicking on the renderer and going in Herr Inspector. Und wir müssen verstanden, dass das Depthwasser ist sehr wichtig. Yeah, the depth buffer is very important. So let's turn on the depth buffer like that, and now we can see our scene, which looks like it's quite like the C4D one, although if we look carefully we can see that our textures are actually mirrored the way they are mapped on the models. So let's take a look in C4D, and we can see that the texture at the top here, it's got the detail there on the left hand side, and in V4 it's on the right hand side. So to sort that out, we'll click on the COLLADA file node and go in Hair Inspector again, and all we have to do is change the coordinate system of source from left-handed to right-handed, and that will sort the mapping of the texture. And as you can see now, we've got the textures that are mapped correctly. If we compare it, C4D, V4, it's the same. The only drawback to this is that you're gonna have to invert your position on the z-axis and your transforms. But trust me, I've tried a lot of different combinations of, left-handed, right-handed, source up axis, source right axis, target up axis, all this stuff. I tried loads of different ones, and the one that seems to be the less complicated, it's just this one, where you just change to right-handed the top coordinate system of source, and then just invert your transform on your z-axis, and that just seems to work perfectly. So now that we've got our scene pretty much exactly like we've got it in C4D, I'd just like to point out actually just how clever COLLADA is already, that it's mapped the texture of the sphere exactly correctly according to the C4D settings. Even though these are custom mapping settings, it's kept it in V4, which is great. So now let's go back to C4D and try and get some more complicated models in. So you might have noticed that these models are still parametric. They're kind of primitives specific to C4D, and I can still change, the number of segments and all these great things. And surprisingly, it exports well to COLLADA, but what COLLADA does is basically flattens all your parametric models to polygonal models, exactly the same way the icon here does. And so you could argue it's best practice to always flatten your models before COLLADA exports. So we'll go ahead and do that. Just click on your model and click on the icon, and then again, other model icon. And you could see the icon has changed next to the name of the model, and it's now a polygonal face, and that tells you that it's a polygonal model. So what you see now in C4D is what you get in V4 for these models. Also, it's important to point out that we've now got a UV tag here, and what this UV tag does is convert whatever type of custom mapping you may have on your texture tag in C4D, convert that to a UV mapping that's understandable in real-time engines like Unity or V4. It's also best custom to keep it at the end. I know that for Unity is really important, so always leave your UV tag at the end after your textures. And if you were to change the mapping of your texture to spherical, that UV tag will convert it to something understandable in your real-time engine. You might even want to lock UV tags to help the export. Anyway, let's make a more complicated model. We'll do some sweep NURBS with a Mo spline. Hide the models. Mo spline. We'll do something pretty random. Obviously, like Pedro's hair. New haircut. Pedro's been upgraded. Yeah, wicked. So random. We need a circle as well. Circle. Put all that in some sweep NURBS. And then, because we're using Mo spline, the multiplying dictate how big the circle is, and that's just here in the width, which is wicked. It's here. So there's our sweep knobs. We can see there's way too many polys, so we'll tone it down a bit. In our multiplying, turn down the number of steps, 25. And obviously tone down our circle as well. You know, something like 25 degrees. There you go, that's better. Now move the sweep knobs. Pedro, what are you doing? Move the sweep knobs into scene so we can see them with the other models. Move it a bit further down. Put a texture. And then what we'll do, we'll leave it like that on purpose. We will make the mistake on purpose to leave it like that to see the problem it creates. So let's export as COLLADA 1.4, bro. 1.4. Yeah. Number 2, like Bono. Yeah. Export, go back in V4. We'll load our new scene. You know, it looks like it worked. You know, it's loaded our new sweep knobs. But you see, as soon as we start applying transforms, it's not going to work. So let's do that. Transform 3D vector. And the way I'm putting the transform here between the mesh COLLADA node and the Fong, you know, in between their transform pins, is exactly what you want to do. You can put a whole complicated chain of transforms, set slices, whatever you want, however you want to do it, to control all your models using different controllers like Kinect, Leap Motion, your keyboard, whatever. Obviously, it all happens here. So anyway, let's translate our models. If we start putting a normal kind of range, V4 range value, you can see it doesn't move much. So, you know, it's best to either map the value or, you know, you could just simply multiply it by 20, something like that. And then you'd get within the V4 range. Obviously, this is due as well to when you export in COLLADA, the scale that you choose to be 1. If you raise that scale, then obviously it'll move more, but you'll have bigger models. So that's just up to you. So obviously now that I've multiplied it, it moves a lot more. But straight away you can see it doesn't work. You can see the caps of our sweep knobs are not moving, or they're moving at a different scale to the rest of our models. So obviously there's a problem there, and that's because we didn't convert our model properly. We didn't flatten it properly before in C4D. So let's go back in C4D and do that and fix that. So in C4D, if we click our model and flatten it, you can see straight away it doesn't just create one model like the other primitives. It's a bit more complicated, and it's basically dropped all the caps as different models. Oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention that you can see that it's not worked as well because of the amount of meshes. You can see that our mesh node has like 25 meshes outputting. So obviously that's not right. For the purpose of this exercise, we should only get 3 models, you know, the sphere, cube, and the sweep knobs. So that shows you as well that it's not right. And again, it shows you here because now when I just try to convert it simply as COLLADA would, you get 25 models. So anyway, there's a way to fix that. Just select all the caps, take the caps out of the hierarchy, put them above the sweep knobs, then select all the caps with the sweep knobs, right click and connect objects and delete. And now straight away you get just the one model, which is basically what you want. However, oh, hang on, we'll delete those selections, just delete them. Move your UV tag at the end. and you think that's fine and it looks fine. However, you can see straight away the center point, anchor point, whatever you want to call it, of your object is being modified when you know, connected and delete. So we should also fix that. But that's highlighted another point that I wanted to talk about, which is obviously the center point, anchor point, whatever you want to call it. As important as it is in C4D, the position will obviously influence the rotation and stuff like that. It's exactly the same in V4. And so, for example, if we were to move this center point, so to move a center point, it's this icon on the left here. If you click it, now when you move your model, it won't move your model, but it'll move the actual center point itself. So we'll put that, you know, in the middle by going there and going 0, apply, and now we've got it in the center. Now if we untick that to then now move our model and we'll rotate it, when we rotate, it'll rotate in the center, right? And when we export using COLLADA, that's going to keep it exactly the same, which is brilliant, really. You're going to keep your compositing even of your center points in V4. So we'll keep it like that to show you. We'll go back to our sweep NURBS. There's something wrong with the texture. Hang on. There you go. And now we'll fix the center point as well. So what we'll do, we'll click here to move the center point of the sweep NURBS. We'll go here, put it at 0, 0, 0. We'll apply. And now it's put the, you know, the center of our sweep NURBS pretty much in the center, which is what we want. So it's all good. Let's export back again. And boom, we can see straight away it's fixed it. Our caps are linked to our other model of sweep NURBS, and we've definitely only got 3 models. Although there seems to be something about the scaling of this, because it doesn't seem to be moving at the same scale as the other models. So there's something about that we're going to see and try and fix. Back in C4D, to try and fix our problem, we could see straight away that actually our model is somehow scaled down 0.05 instead of 1 like all the other models. So obviously any transforms applied to this model will be scaled down as well. So this is highlighted the last point I was trying to make about preparing models before we move on to more complicated textures. It's basically the scaling of your models. You know, when you create a 3D scene, you know, you might create loads of different models, and you know, you might click on those models and scale them down like that, just because it's quick and easy, and it helps you for compositing, and it works in C4D and all that stuff. However, when you export to COLLADA, this is all gonna get exported as well, and your transform will also be scaled when you apply it to your model, so it will not work. So there is a trick to fix this anyway. So let's look at our sweep NURBS, click on your model, then go in point mode, and this is a trick basically. Select all so you get all your vertices, and then take your number there that your model is scaled down by, and then time your all your dimensions by that number, and then go back up, put your scaling of your model back to 1. Might look like, oh, it's not worked, but actually it's just the center point that's a bit screwed up. So it's actually put it out of the scene. But this is now your model at 1 by 1. So anyway, what we'll do, we'll just kind of quickly, roughly put it back in position. Not too bad, man, not too bad. You know, not as cool as a night out, you know, with Pedro, but pretty cool still getting it. It's pretty close. So you do these things lives anyway. You don't really think about it. When you're like Bill O'Reilly. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Yeah, Google it. Bill O'Reilly going mental. That's it for our sweet nerves. It should be fixed now. Everything's back to 1 by 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then this one, sorry mate, you gotta go. See you later. And then frame it. And then we'll export. And this time, if we start moving our models, they will move at the same scale. So there you go, it's fixed. So remember, to prepare your models, you should flatten them, make sure they are polygonal, make sure they are one model by connecting the caps and whatever you may have, different clones, whatever you may have, connect them together if you want it as a one model. And obviously double check that all your models are the scale of 1, 1, 1. This way they'll move at the same scale. That's it. So now that we've seen that, I'm going to show you a little bit how you can composite things and how things are moving in V4, and then we'll move on to more complicated textures. Wicked. Yes, so gotta apologise because the wife interrupted the filming, so I was gonna do this tutorial in one take, you see, without any edits, as it was before, but she interrupted. But it's okay because obviously the wife is amazing and she's very beautiful. Some say, well, they all say she's even better looking than Pedro himself, who himself is very handsome. So, you could say that my wife is really good looking. So just like what we're going to do now, which is moving, compositing, transforming, morphing. Now, actually, we're not going to morph. But however, let's see how we can now move. Instead of moving all those models together, this is useless. We don't need all this. What we're doing is we're going to move just the sphere. Well, I'm going to show you how to move just the sphere according to controller or whatever. And so there's loads of ways to do this, but I'm going to use set slice transform. And what this does, it takes an input of spread of transforms and changes the according index of the spread with a different transform. So we're going to put a rotate, yeah, and first of all the input, not the input, the spread we're going to change is obviously the transform of our mesh that goes into our thong, like that. That's going to be all messed up. We want to check the bin size is 1. The index is actually 1. It's 2. It's actually model 2. Because if you look in C4D, our sphere is the second model. So it'll be model 2. So obviously that's index 1. And then our rotate is the input. And then that the problem is we need to tell our rotate to transform our model into the correct position. So we can't just leave the set slice like that and rotate our model. We need to get slice, the same transform. So we get node. And this is going to have basically the same index, obviously, as the set slice, and in fact the same bin size as well. and then that takes the transform, passes it to the rotate node. So let's move it around a bit. This is messed up, bro. This is messed up. This is like me on a Saturday night. It's just so messed up. So that should work, shouldn't it? It's messed up. It looks messed up, but it should work. There you go. See that? Now we're rotating only our sphere. So that little kind of module we've created allows us to move this one model. Let's add some keyboard control, little module, you know, for keyboard control. We can apply that to the rotate like that just to see it. And now basically when I press up, there you go. So let's zoom out a bit. And now see when I press up on my keyboard, rotates it. It's got a little damper. You could do it loads of different ways, whatever. Just for this example, this is easy. Just to show you. Here you go. I've already got one of my models, rotation and position to a certain extent because of the center point changing according to a controller. This being the keyboard, could be anything, lead, connect, whatever. Anyway, so I clean up the patch so you can see it better. Here's our module to move the sphere, and as you know, it's really easy to add more control to other models. I'm just gonna show you this really quickly. All you gotta do is take this, copy it, paste that module, put it there. We'll move this down, you know, and then just chain your transform. So you connect this set slice to this one, and this one back to the Fong. Move it down, and then obviously you don't want to control the same model, so you change the index to 2. That'll control the cube, and what we want to do is, instead of rotate, we'll do a translate. And see, you just adapt your module, and this is what's brilliant with V4, to be honest. It's just so quick. And again, we'll add I think this one, yeah, we'll time it. Remember, we want to time the values of our transforms because of the scale and all that. So I reckon 100 even might be good. We'll recreate the same kind of method, put it on the X, and obviously we must remember to connect our get slice node back to the mesh transform. What this does is basically chain all the transform together. So we pass in the data and transform the data here from this data, not from 0. So we've still got the scaling, compositing as it is in C4D. That's passed through that get slice node. Through that translate, it gets transformed, and that's how we get this. See? Move it, make it 200. And now when I press and hold down on my keyboard, you can see the cube's moving, and it's just like a kind of video game type of controller you'd want, really. So look at that, sphere up, and there you go. We've got something going on here, you know what I'm saying? This is good. Okay, so this is it. This is wicked. Let's move on to more complicated textures. Let's go back C4D. I'll clean it up later, as I always say to my wife. There we go. Clean. C4D, let's create textures using a different method, and this time, instead of using pictures, which is pretty easy. We'll use the C4D's inbuilt shaders. So create a new material in the color channel. Instead of loading a picture in the texture, select layer shader and then click on it, and we'll start adding some effects or whatever you want. Oh, one sec, this is my mate. One sec. Yeah, hello mate, what's going on? You down there? Wicked. Alright, see you in a minute. I'm coming down. Cheers. Bye. Sorry guys, I gotta go and see a man about a dog. Yeah, back on the scene. Shady shaders. We'll add a gradient. And before I keep going, I'll just explain a bit about the layer shader. Because we could just go back and, you know, add a gradient here. And you know, what's the difference? Well, the layer shader allows you to composite your layers as you would basically in Photoshop. So it's really similar to the Photoshop layer module. It even looks the same. It's no real 3D skills here. It's more about knowing how to blend layers in Photoshop and stuff like that. So we'll go and put a gradient. We'll add, and you can keep adding different gradient. We can keep adding different whatever. We'll add some noise. Go into noise, and we'll do something like cranial. And this is very important. The space of your noise should be UV2D, because actually in the end we're going to export the texture as a flat kind of, you know, image, so it needs to be 2D UV. Otherwise you're going to end up with some breaks in your texture, some funk breaks, some funny shit. So remember, and the same goes as well for your gradients. You gotta be careful here. Like if you were to do something that was spherical, you could do some 3D spherical. That's not gonna work. If you were gonna do something spherical, you've got to do 2D circular. Everything you do should be 2D. In this case we'll do it vertical, so it goes up, and we've got a noise. Sorry, let's create a model so we can see it really. We'll put the texture on it. Go back in our texture, in our layer shader. So we've got our gradient, we've got our noise. Let's work a bit more on our noise, clip it a bit, push it up a bit like that. That's alright. And then, you know, you could just like overlay it like that and get a cool effect. But then look at that, you've straight away got this ugly edge, obviously. So you could try and change the mapping of your texture to fix that. But even if you did that, that'll change the mapping of your whole texture. And actually what you want to do here is change the mapping of your just your noise layer, which you can't do. So actually one way to go about that, which is actually to work on the texture itself, and you can actually layer mask stuff. So again, it's similar to Photoshop, and you know, this is just showing you how brilliant really this module is to create texture. It's a really good way of creating textures. So what you want to do to mask this is first create a folder, put the noise in the folder, and then actually that noise now becomes normal, and this is actually the actual whole folder will overlay. Then we'll create a gradient that we'll use as a layer mask. That gradient will do circular. We'll do, you know, something like that. And then if we go back, that gradient, just select here layer mask, and it doesn't work because I don't know why, mate. This is so illogical, but you have to put it underneath the layer that it's gonna mask. So you put the layer mask underneath the layer that it will mask in a folder, and that's how it works. And now as you see, we've got our texture very nicely
masked so that we don't get the ugly edge, and in this case that's basically what I wanted. Obviously again you can like tone down the overlays, you can do loads of different stuff, change it to additive, you know, obviously do whatever you want. Just for now we'll leave it like that. Maybe I'll tone down the noise a bit. Yeah, that's cool. And now obviously now that you've done that texture as it is, and you know you want to export your model as it is so that it works, it will not work as it is when you export to COLLADA, but there is a way to make it work, which is absolutely brilliant. It's very simple. It's basically baking your texture. So now that you've got your texture, let's just double check that in our layer shader everything is mapped correctly. Things like, as you know, the noise got to be UV2D, that's all good. Our gradient's got to be 2D as well. It is, even this one 2D, so it will all work. What we want to do is click on our object, first of all flatten it, don't forget that, and then click our object, go objects, bake texture, and for this you could also use bake object, but you won't have as many options when it comes to different channels as we'll see now. So click on your bake texture tag, and then first thing you want to do is tell it where to save it, which is going to be in our text folder, and we'll call it, you know, red noise. And then you want to change from Photoshop because that's not going to work in V4. You have to change to PNG, JPEG, whatever. We choose PNG. Size will go quite high just to see that it works as well. And then don't worry too much about all this stuff. For this, it doesn't matter. Don't forget to tick color because we want to export, well rather we want to bake the color channel, and then for what we're doing at the moment, that's all you need to know. And we can just double check the, yeah, and then basically just click bake, and as you see your texture is being made, it's being made into a picture. And what you do then to export to COLLADA, what I recommend you do is duplicate that texture so that you've got a backup of it, you know, with still basically your layer shader, so you can go about and update it and change it, and then in that duplicated texture, which is this one here, in the color channel mat 3, make sure it's the right one, yeah it is the right one, and then in the color channel this time, instead of the layer shader, just load the image red noise. And now don't forget to actually swap the texture as well, because at the moment you still got that mat 2. So what you do to swap the texture around is click on the texture here and then drag and drop it, bang on the texture, and now you can see it's changed it to mat 3. We could also fucking rename it to red noise backup, and that one red noise. Wicked. And now that you've got the right texture that's attached to your model, and that texture's got the equivalent image to your shader which you've got as a backup, you can export as COLLADA 1.4. We'll call it something different, and let's go back in V4 and check it out. V4, we'll load our new scene, and as you can see, it's worked really well. Look at that. That's the texture that we developed basically in C4D using the inbuilt shaders, and then we converted it to an image so that we can use it in V4 exactly how it was when it was a layer shader. It's exactly the same. It's brilliant. So I have to mention as well that when you bake textures, as opposed to bake object, it seems you get more options as well, especially in terms of channels. And this is great if you're going to do anything like bump maps. So if you're going to have your bump map channel in C4D, as you know, all the bump maps and different channels, alpha, even all this stuff, it can get really complicated in C4D. So with the bake texture, what's brilliant is you can export those as well. And you know, that's why if you look at your color name, we did call it red noise, but the actual file we get was called red noise color. That's because we ticked color here, but if we were to tick bump, we'd get two files. We'd get the red noise color file and also the red noise bump file, which would be grayscale or whatever, and would express your bump map information, which then obviously you could then go back in, you know, in V4, and you could use, you know, using for example the bump node. As we can see there, it looks brilliant. I mean how good is V4? Do you know what I mean? You get the node, press F1, you get the help. It's already a brilliant patch. You can see the potential of it. It's brilliant, isn't it? That's why we're here. That's why we're here, bro. That's why we're here. Anyway, so these covers, the inbuilt Cinema 4D, get the fuck out of here, bump map. This concludes it for the actual inbuilt C4D shading system. What we're going to do now is go back in C4D and just have a quick look at the final way of making textures, which is using body paint. Let's do that now. Wicked! Body paint is not some weird British pseudo-sexual thing that people do after watching Peter Greenaway's films. By the way, I recommend Drowning by Numbers. Great film, watch it. Body paint is like having the whole of Photoshop within C4D. You'll have it if you've got C4D, you got body paint. It allows you to basically paint your models in 3D, as you can as well in Photoshop, but this is within C4D. And it's especially useful for painting, texturing complex models, also characters or faces, and things that may have some weird kind of UV maps. So let's create some kind of slightly weird model. I will do a sphere. We'll change it to that. Raise it a bit. We'll put a deformer. In the shading, we'll put some noise. We'll bump it up. Where is the number? There we have it. Turn it down a bit. Yeah, that's better. Push it up. Then we'll put all that shit in a sweep nodes. No, hyper nodes. But this time we'll tone it down as well. And there's our weird kind of model. Looks weird enough. We'll put it into scene. So we can see it a bit better. And now we'll flatten the sphere, because we should really flatten the sphere. But we can actually keep it like that for now. I think we'll go into body paint mode like that, and then we'll click here, start the body paint wizard. We'll untick all our models apart from our hypernerves hierarchy, because that's our model we want to body paint. And then just keep going, bro, keep going. Here we want 24:8 by 24:8, so change that because we want it to be square. tick color. Don't worry about it, just close, and then you can start painting. So you know, I don't know, let's paint something really meaningful, you know. This is like Photoshop. Obviously it's, you know, size of your brush, all this stuff. You can obviously change the color, but anyway, let's paint something, you know, something poetic. And then as soon as you've painted something poetic, you must save it, because this is a trick. When it's set up as it is, it's going to save as a TIFF or a PSD or something that's not going to work in V4. So straight away go save texture as, and then change it to, and then you've got it as a PNG. Save it, obviously put it in your text file, call it. Now you've got it as a PNG, it will be set as a PNG, which you can see here. So you can actually keep on painting it. Obviously this was a joke, and this time we'll paint something, you know, that's really poetic and meaningful. Okay, now that we got something that isn't silly and really means something, we can save our texture, and then the way it works is you can go back and forth into body paint. So you can go back into C4D now, and you can click your models, but and do whatever you want with your models. And then if you click your model with the body paint texture and click the texture, then go back into body paint. Now if you start painting again, once again you can save it, save your texture, and that would have saved the texture. And now we can export more different. Hey, what do you know? There's our penis. So as you can see, body paint works in V4 through the COLLADA export. Although you could argue that the penis's belen is a bit too red. Well, I mean, if your belen is that red, you should probably go and see the doctor, mate. But yeah, as you can see, we've even got our last stroke. So it works really well. One thing to note, if you go back in body paint and start changing your texture and save it and then export your scene, you might need to reload your texture here by right clicking on the actual file texture node. So that's that for body paint. Quick mention of the selection texture method, which I'll show you quickly, which can be a drag, but it also works in COLLADA, but it just increases the number of models. So if you go into face mode, you select, let's say, them faces, and just simply drag a texture onto it. It will actually add different texture with a selection tag here, and that will actually work in COLLADA. As you can see, it works straight away. However, we end up with an extra mesh. Now there's 6, but actually in our scene we've only got 5. So the cube is actually counted as 2 models because it's got 2 textures. It can be annoying, especially if you're moving this cube, which we're doing here. But there's a way to fix that. First of all, as you can see, when I press on my keyboard, I'm not actually controlling the right models anymore. That's because I've added new models and they've stacked up on top, and that's changed the order of the models, and it shows you again how important the order of your models is on C4D. So what you want to do is take your models that you're going to control and put them at the top as model 1, 2, 3, whatever, and the ones that you're not going to transform, put them at the bottom, and whenever you keep adding models, keep stacking them like that, so that you never break your order, so you don't have to keep going back in V4 and reprogram everything. Anyway, I'll just show you now. Now if I look here, I can see that the first mesh name is sphere indeed, so I know that the sphere is my first model, as it is now that I've changed it in C4D. Sphere as first model, cube as second. Go back in there, and what we want to do obviously is change the index. Since now our sphere is the first model, model number 1, index 0. For our cube, it is index 1, but it's also index 2. So because our cube is now 2 models, so we'll spread that and grab index 1 and 2, since our cube is model 2 and 3, since it's split in 2 now because it's got 2 textures. And now as I press my keys on my keyboard, there we go, it works exactly how it was before, even though the cube is now 2 models. Now another way to solve that selection texture thing, which splits into 2 models, which is actually better than this, but this is just to illustrate how it works with 2 models as well. Just spread it here, and you can control more than 1 model with whatever controller you got. However, what you should really do is bake this whole texture. However, I couldn't really do this using the old bake texture tag, and strangely enough the bake object tag gave me a better result. So you might want to try that. Obviously it's very similar, you just get less options as I said to you, but if you put it at 24:8 24:8 PNG, and then obviously same folder, and then export. You might not want to have that much border. Bake. And there you go. Now it's created one PNG. What bake object does better than bake texture is that it takes your actual model, duplicates it, and applies the new flattened texture to one and leaves the backup there. So you can just like kill that and re-export again, and this way you'll have your cube as just a one model. See, we've got a little 1 pixel border, which is you might find ugly. You can change that again here and rebake, re-export. That's if you want to use the selection texture in C4D, export to COLLADA and keep it as a one model bake object. Now the final part of this tutorial is going to be how to export animated models. Wicked. So exporting animated models to COLLADA is great. You can do a lot of stuff, but you're limited to animations of positions, scale, rotation of your models. You can still do loads of stuff using mograph tools like cloners and effectors, but you cannot export an animation as I'm showing you right now, which is what's called a PLA, point level animation, because this animation involves changing the position of the vertices of your model. It's kind of a mesh animation. Those types of animation cannot be exported to COLLADA. COLLADA does not allow for PLA animation. I've checked it on the forum, done loads of research, tried loads of things, it doesn't work. However, you can still do loads of stuff, as I said, with cloners, and we'll see that right now. For example, we can show a little bit about dynamics, and how you can quickly set up some dynamics. Obviously C4D is brilliant for dynamics. The engine's really good and it's really simple. So what we're doing is just have a cube, We'll put a tag simulation COLLADA sphere simulation rigid body. Straight away we got some dynamics. So let's put a texture just so we could see it in V4, and if we export like that it won't work because the animation is still inbuilt to C4D's dynamics engine. So we're gonna bake this animation. So to do that you gotta go in animation, drag your sphere, click on it, function, bake object, position, rotation and scale. Okay, and there you go. Now your animation is baked, which means that if you export it to COLLADA, make sure to tick export animation, obviously. Okay, go back in V4, and now in V4 as you can see it's loaded our new scene, and simply on the mesh node there's a time pin, and now if I change the value, as you can see we've got our animation running. So it's already working very well. It's that simple. COLLADA exports very well animated models as long as it's position, scale, rotation and things like that. So you can still do some pretty complicated stuff as I'll show you right now. We'll go back, start from scratch. No, actually we might as well just start from here. We'll just cancel that and we'll use a cloner. That cloner will put our sphere in it. We'll clone it like on a grid. Then we'll add an effector, random effector. Move our cloner up a bit. Go back in standard mode for now. We'll make our square a bit bigger. And then obviously already, since it's been cloned, but the dynamics are on the sphere, we still get our sphere animation that's bouncing off. We'll increase the bounce. Cool. And we can also, just to show you that it'll still work as long as we bake our models, round about here we'll turn off the dynamics. So here we'll turn it off just one frame after, and then we'll turn on dynamic transition and we'll put it down to about 25 frames, and that should give it some kind of rewind effect. Let's see about that. Look at that. So you see, even kind of inbuilt, not complex, but inbuilt animation using dynamic on off transition, all this stuff, we can still export that. Again, it is quite simple. Since it's in a cloner, it's a bit more complicated than before, but it's all about just flattening our cloner correctly. In this case, you want to make sure that render instances is not ticked on. So do not tick that on for this, because then it will pass on the dynamics tag to all the clones. So simply click on your cloner, flatten it, and now you see you get all your spheres passed on with the dynamics tag basically all you gotta do is go back in animation and then select all your spheres, drag them in the animation, then function, bake objects, position. If you've got any scale, obviously tick scale, rotation. PLA does not work in COLLADA. It will only work for FBX exports. It will work in Unity, but it won't work in V4. Anyway, okay, and there you go. It adds loads of keyframes. However, there's your animation. It's a bit laggy. So now that we've baked it all like that, we can export, zoom out a bit, and as you can see, now that I start scrubbing through the time, our animation plays perfectly, so it works. What we want to do is control playing the animation through our keyboard. So you could argue you could just plug in the damper into the time. Obviously you'd map it to 2.5, which is the length of the animation, and then as I press up on my keyboard it'll play the animation. But with a damper you'd have to hold it down, and then also as you release it, it'd play the animation backward, which is not what we want in this case. So I made this little module using West monoflop trick. Big up West, big up West. And all we need to do is plug in the Stallone into tog edge and monoflop, kill that damper. And what this module does really is kind of run an LFO once through a filter, a monoflop filter, SNH. Basically the SNH stops it from registering when you release the key and start playing it backward, and then it gets mapped as well to 2.5, and we put that into the time. And now when I press up on my keyboard, it plays the animation once. Every time I press once, plays the animation once. It also can be interrupted, as you can see there, but it always resets to the beginning. So you know, that's really good for what we want. Just plays the animation once so you can see it. You can obviously adapt that module to whatever you want. And that should really help demonstrate how you can bake and export dynamics animation and also basic mograph tools like cloners into V4 using COLLADA. So what if instead of using dynamics to generate our animation for our models, we use more complicated animation tools like mograph effectors, like the plane effector or delay formula. If you apply those and animate them and drag them on the timeline and even bake them, you won't get any keyframe data because they're not models. There's actually a really clever way to hack it though, and I'll show it to you now. I call it the Russian trick because I learned it watching a tutorial in Russian, which obviously, as you guess, I don't actually speak a word of Russian. I mean, I wish I did because it sounds like a wicked language. But anyway, I followed it a little bit baffled, thinking what the fuck, and man, guess what, it fucking works. Yeah bro, and we're gonna do the Russian trick right now. So let's set up a quick animation for the Russian trick. We'll start from scratch in standard mode. Start with a simple sphere. We'll need a cloner sphere, do some in linear. And then we'll start adding effectors. So when you add effectors, if you've got the cloner selected, it'll add the effector directly to the cloner. So we'll do that. We'll put a random effector. Then we're going to sweep across a plane effector to reveal all these spheres. So again, we'll select our cloner, get a plane effector, and that plane effector is going to move things down and on the left. So we'll do something like -150 minus 150, and then it's also gonna reveal these spheres. So there's a little trick there. We'll do -1, so they're disappeared, and we put a fall off as opposed to the other effectors. This one's gonna have a fall off, and that's how we're gonna animate it to sweep across. We'll put a box fall off, something like that. There you go. Then we'll invert it, and that's how now when we sweep across, see, that's how it's going to work. We're going to add some more effectors to make the animation a bit more interesting. We'll add a formula that generates some position, scale, rotation animation. And we'll put a delay as well. And that's just going to make the whole animation a lot more bouncy. We'll put texture, zoom out, see what we got. Oh yeah, we got animator plane effector as well. So we'll go to frame 1. Let's see what we got for, oh yeah, we can't see it because it's hidden. So what we do is we'll sweep across our plane effector, so we'll animate its position from here across. And as you see, when I play it back, as it sweeps across, it reveals all this bouncy animation. So I moved it a bit too far. Yes. So now my animation is set up, but I can't bake my effectors like my plane or formula effectors that generate animation, because they're not models. They affect our sphere model, which is then cloned through our cloner. So it's a more complex chain of mograph tools, and to export that we need to use expresso, and first we need to duplicate our cloner and then flatten it. But before you flatten it, make sure that this time you tick render instances, and then click on your cloner, flatten it, and then you can see that you've got your cloner, and then instead of giving us just a bunch of spheres, it's giving us just one sphere, and then mograph instances that copy that sphere. Then what we need to do is on this flatten cloner, we need to add an expresso tag. We use expresso to parent each flattened clone instance to the correct object in our chain of mograph. We'll drag our original cloner into expresso because we want to pass on the position, scale, rotation data from all the clones to the new flattened clones. To do that, we'll use the data node, and this is really the clever node that does everything, passing the data from one clone to another. So we'll connect them like that, and then we'll also need to access our hierarchy and also the object index. We'll connect that, rearrange the patch, and then finally we'll need obviously to pass on all this data to our new flattened clones. We'll need to pass on the global matrix That's position, scale, rotation, to obviously global matrix, and also the instance gonna be passed. And there you go, that's our expresso setup, and it will work like that as it is now. If I go out at expresso and I hide my original cloner and I rewind, as you can see, the new flattened clones are animated exactly the same way. So obviously as it is now, it still won't export. We need to bake it. So we'll go in animation, drag our flattened clones, antique show animated. Just click on your cloner, function, bake objects, position, scale, rotation, untick that, untick create copy, and there you have it. As you can see, it's baked everything perfectly. Your whole animation is now baked. Double check that, and anyway, to export, what we need to do really is kill everything. Just keep your cloner so that it's really clean, and there's your animation. We ain't got no effectors, we ain't got nothing left, but there's our animation as it is, and that will export to COLLADA. So we'll export that, and we'll go back in V4 and double check it, and we'll also see how you can still transform your model individually in V4 while the animation runs, which is brilliant, wicked. So in V4, before we load our new scene, just gotta mention how you can transform your models individually while the animation's running. Remember how we had it set up so that the animation plays once when you press up, but if you press down, it was moving the cube on the right. Now if I press down, the cube was two models, it will grab the two models according to the order, which is those two spheres. But what's amazing is that you can move the two spheres while the animation running, so that gives you so much control, and obviously you can see the potential is amazing in what you can do by making your animation in C4D, and then actually you can modify it in real time again in V4. It's amazing, it's brilliant really. So anyway, let's just load our new scene, double check it, and as you can see, it doesn't work because I forgot to untick render instances in all these mograph instances, which means that it's not compatible with COLLADA export. So what you do, as you've seen, select all the instances and then make sure you untick render instances on the instances themselves, export again, and now there you go. If I press up, there's our animation running. So it's worked perfectly, and the COLLADA export, even stuff as complicated as complex mograph chain of animation. So it's brilliant really, and we can still as well affect the models individually as I've just explained. Now I gotta mention as well that this Russian trick setup is brilliant, because you can also actually keep that setup and change the actual instance model. So if you take the cube and then drag it back in the hierarchy, and then, well, we'll go back in standard and just give it a texture, and then we can kill the sphere, grab all the instances, and then go in object and drag our cube as the new reference object. And now, because our cube isn't animated, it's just going to stay there and look ugly. So you can hack it by simply dropping the size down to 0. If you delete it, it won't work because it needs a reference. But as you can see now, there's the animation running with a different model. And this could be anything really, as you've seen. You know, you could put anything there and then just change the reference object, and then you can create loads of different animations. So that's the power of the Russian trick. That's it for me. The one thing that I haven't mentioned, which you can do in COLLADA, is exporting 3D models with bones, skeleton and skinning data. Now this is a whole big subject in itself, and maybe, who knows, in the future I might do a tutorial about that. But meanwhile, if you're interested in the subject, you should really check out my mate Tekor's brilliant contribution on the V4 website, which is a whole workflow about animated characters. It's called Animated Character, and it allows you to generate animation in V4 and apply that to different models, uses XML. It's wicked. Make sure you check it out. Thank you for watching, boys, girls and seagulls. This is Evil, the West Side's evil twin. And remember, contribute and keep on fucking patching. Wicked.